Basically waging war on a very small area of land, densely populated by 50% children. And in the process, you're killing thousands and thousands of children and will continue to do so. And I have resisted going as far as you have done in your criticism of the Israeli government. I resist no more. I think we've reached common ground about what we view is happening and has been happening through this period of this blockade, which frankly is just starvation of the people there, including so many innocent young women and children. And I think that the incessant bombing and killing, and we don't know how many civilians are being killed, but it is on a daily basis. It looks like hundreds of people every day, with no apparent attempt, it seems to me, to have any real plan for how this ends or what happens when it ends. How many children have you killed?
Piers, Israel is not killing children.
Israel is killing children every single day.
Piers, this is a blood label you're putting on Israel. You know it's not true.
What? No, it's not actually. And what you're trying to do is be very weaselly with your words.
No, I'm not.
They then moved into a nearly 3-month blockade, which to me is a criminal starvation of a populace, which should never have been allowed to happen. The bombardment has been utterly relentless all over Gaza. They've obliterated 70% of Gaza. I think is completely disproportionate to what happened to Israel on October the 7th. These hardliners on the Israeli government cabinet, the way they've been talking now quite brazenly and openly about ethnic cleansing.
Okay, so it's weird to even have to like show that, and we sit in a room
together. Can I make one point about it?
Yeah.
No, it's actually, I don't mind it at all. I stand by everything I said.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, you've only shown my rhetoric this year from the 3-month blockade onward.
No, so
I would say it would be fairer if you'd also shown my passionate defense of Israel.
Well, you addressed it.
To defend itself, which I maintained for a long time, by the way, and used to get absolutely hammered by the pro-Palestinian side in a way that I've, since this year, had more hammering from the pro-Israeli side. So,
well, you addressed it there. That's why we put that clip in.
And I think that's just
because there has been a shift. That's what I wanted.
No question.
Right. So I think that is so. First off, you acknowledge that there's been no starvation, correct?
No,
you don't acknowledge.
I don't acknowledge that.
Well, there was starvation of the Israeli hostages, but you
yes.
So where are the videos and images of the starving Gazans?
Well, I've seen a lot, but you would dismiss them all as fakes.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, if you can show me one, I'll tweet it out.
Okay, here's my problem with this. Yeah. So the problem is my number one problem with this.
Yeah.
You can say there's no starvation. I can say there's starvation. The UN says there was starvation, but you guys don't believe a word the UN says. The other official bodies say there was starvation. You don't want to hear a word they say. Israel denies everything. And in the end, the biggest problem is that Israel will not allow, to this day, international journalists into Gaza to do their jobs. And I keep asking, why is that? Because you and I can...
Well, because they're virtually all activists, not journalists.
No, I don't mean Palestinian journalists. Yeah. I mean international journalists.
Yeah.
I mean the international journalists.
So where are the videos?
Reuters, let in AP, let in the BBC, let in Sky, let in
it's also
NBC,
a war zone.
Let in
it's
ABC.
A war zone.
Yeah, but they operate in war zones all over the world.
But so when this all ended a few weeks ago, when Trump does this thing, where are all the thousands of starving people? I mean, we're seeing videos of restaurants that are
let the journalists in to do their job.
But I mean, right now, where are they? These people have phones.
How do you know?
Live stream. What do you mean?
Do you see where they are?
Of course, there are plenty of videos.
Can't.
What do you mean? There are plenty of videos.
The media are not allowed to do their jobs, Dave.
No.
And I have a big problem as a former editor of a national newspaper.
But the Gazans have phones, and they're showing videos of...
You can say that no Gazan has starved at all. That's entirely your prerogative.
Yeah.
The reports by almost every official body say the opposite, but you don't believe them. My view is you're entitled to not believe anyone, right? It's fine. I had that thing with Meghan Markle. Didn't believe her either. It cost me my job. However, the best way to get to the truth is let journalists who are used to covering in war zones, let them go in and do their job, particularly now we have the ceasefire. So let them go in. There is a reason the Israeli government is not letting the media in. And I fear I know what it is. They are terrified about what the world will uncover.
I just think that's just...
Well, let him in.
I just think...
There's one way to find out.
But there are quite literally, I think, almost 2 million Gazans there. They have phones. They're releasing videos now. They're at restaurants. They're out and about. Why did none of the Hamas fighters, when they're releasing the people, look hungry? A lot of them look fat. They have fresh clothes and fresh haircuts.
I've seen lots of images of Palestinians looking hungry.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't dispute that 20,000 plus children have died, right?
So whose fault is that? Because this seems to be the one that most people are annoyed at you about, because you keep saying proportionate. That's the word that has bothered me with this. So what if someone killed your wife and your daughter and kidnapped your son and raped and pillaged your whole community and all that stuff. What would be your proportionate response?
Well, you've got to get it into the context of why I criticise what happened. I do believe the 3-month blockade earlier this year was a criminal blockade. I believe it was deliberate starvation of a people, deliberately denying them food and aid. If you
has any other country in the history of the world been told to feed the people that are killing it?
If you look at the Geneva Convention, actually, but then no other country in the world has had the control that Israel has over Gaza, right?
Well,
which again is a whole separate issue, isn't
Egypt could open the door.
Of course it could, and it should. And it should. I don't dispute
nobody's annoyed at Egypt.
I don't dispute that for a moment.
Yeah.
And look, I've always supported Israel and its right to exist. And when this happened, October the 7th, one of the worst things I've ever seen, and I steadfastly supported Israel's right to defend itself, and I still do. However, I kept asking from early on, what would be a proportionate response?
But who has ever been asked to have a proportionate response?
Well, let me ask you.
So they should have murdered 1,000 people and raped women?
Let me throw it back at you. Yeah. In the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, 75 years or so, there has never been a response from either side to an atrocity by the other. Both sides claim the other side's committed atrocities, right? There's never been a response, anything on this scale. So we had, on October the 7th, 1,200 people were killed. We had nearly 7,000 more wounded. We had 255, 6 people who were kidnapped, including a baby, including Holocaust survivors. Absolutely horrific. But the reason I asked about proportionality, show me another moment in the 75-year conflict where the response has been to kill 60 times as many people. And where you have hang on, let me finish. Where you have a government with people like Smodrich and Ben-Gvir who begin publicly, openly talking about ethnically cleansing all the Palestinians from Gaza, about annexing the West Bank, about taking complete control of all of it, to the point that Donald Trump had to step in and say that is not happening, and credit to him for doing that.
Sure, so but random ministers talking about,
they're not two of the most senior people in the government.
You know, this is a very strange thing to me, and I really don't understand why the pro-Israeli camp would always deny this. I think it's something they should just own up to and move on. When you are waging a war, when you are carpet bombing an area that is densely populated, people will die. Innocent people will be caught in the crossfire. That is true. And whether your intention was to target those innocent civilians or not is totally immaterial, because at the end of the day, innocent people will die. Does that make sense? You hear the Israeli spokespeople or defendants refuse this. They will scream at the top of their voices saying that they are not killing innocent people and they are only going after Hamas. Well, your intention might be to go only after Hamas, but if your actions prove otherwise, or if the outcome of your actions prove otherwise, then you have to be held for that. You cannot just claim that you only go after Hamas, whereby the results are quite different. You might be going after Hamas. You might have the intention just to go after Hamas. But if the result is the death of thousands of innocent Palestinians living in Gaza, you kill them. You kill them. That is the truth. You killed them. But Israel will never, ever own up to this. They will just keep on deflecting from the story or from the main subject of concern. Same thing that Rubin is doing in this clip you just watched with Piers Morgan. He keeps on dodging the whole thing, just expanding the goalpost. Now, Piers asks him, why is Israel, the government, not allowing international journalists to go in and record the whole thing, since they are complaining that the images we are getting are just propaganda, that the images are being used to criticize Israel, that Israel did not deserve all those negative publicity they get. And so if Israel thinks that they are being treated unfairly, the reasonable thing to do is to let in international journalists, people who have documented war front before, to go in and document every single thing. From them, we cannot get the real story. Rubin was like, it is a war zone, it is dangerous, so we shouldn't let them go in. But remember, there's a peace deal in place. The fighting has slowed down. So journalists can go in and do their job. Then the second thing was, Piers said that there have been many videos from Gaza where people are starving, where people are going hungry. And Dave was like, all that is not the real thing. It's just activists just trying to paint Israel black. Then Dave turned around and said that the Gazians have phones, so they can send out images. On the one hand, what they send out will not be believed by Dave, because according to Dave, all those images are being put out there by the so-called activists, not really credible or impartial journalists. And on the other hand, we should not let international journalists go in, because Gazians have phones and they can put out images of how Gaza is. Well, they were there with phones. I don't think they still have the same number of phones as they did before the war started, or in the early days of the war, if we could call that a war. And secondly, when people are starving and people are going hungry and people are thinking about how to survive, they're not thinking about becoming journalists. That is why we journalists need to be let in to record everything. And I'm sure that when journalists go in, they will be amazed on what Israel has done on that piece of land. You'll be amazed. And why is no one talking about having an investigation to figure out what happened? Why is nobody advocating for that? I think this should have been done by now, isn't it? The whole investigation into what really happened should have been carried out by now. People need to establish the reason for this massive security failure so that they can prevent it from happening in the future. There was supposed to be a thorough investigation by now. Why are they not doing it? Why? That is why I have been speculating that there might be more to this story than we actually know. Most of the times, things really just happen in a vacuum. I used to believe that things just happen, that coincidences do occur. But when I look into things and when I try to figure out things these days, I only come to one conclusion: that things do not just happen in a vacuum. Things, most of the times, are highly planned out. They are highly thought of. And sometimes, those occurrences you might think are just a coincidence, might have been set in motion by other entities. That is it. And the last thing I want to say before I go is that for Dave Rubin to be saying that there are no starving people in Gaza is totally shameful and disgraceful. And I'm happy that even his own followers on his channel came after him and they slammed him like a lord. Most of the comments are against him. I'm happy for that. There are people starving in Gaza. There are people going hungry in Gaza. And for Dave Rubin to sit in America at the comfort of his home studio and say, no one is starving in Gaza, that he saw Hamas with fresh clothes and they were all looking healthily, means no one is starving, is really, really a disgrace. And I'm so ashamed of him for saying that. Does he really think that after 2 years of carpet bombing Gaza, people are not starving? Doesn't he have eyes? Are all the human rights agencies or UN agencies lying? Is he just ignorant or just stupid? Because if he wants to learn, he can just go online and learn. There are so many images of suffering people in Gaza. They are like a lot. If he wants to learn, he can do so. But I'm guessing his mind is made up. His opinions are already formed. And he has an interest to be spreading the Israeli talking points. After all, maybe he's being paid. Maybe. Allegedly.